Hello friends, welcome to the lecture on tenders. Tender is an open offer in writing from the owner to the contractor for execution of certain specified work or sometimes supply of material along with proper mention of terms and conditions in it. So in case of this tender, there are some prerequisites also called as basics which are required to be well prepared prior to advertising any tender notice. Very first is a complete set of drawings. Second is detailed specifications, then terms and conditions and bill of quantities of BOQ. Now coming to methods of invitation of tenders, there are three methods: open or public tenders, private or limited, also called as selected tenders, and last is negotiated or single tenders. Under these open or public tenders, the advertisement is given in leading local newspaper as well as in English newspaper, and in case of this, any contractor may be fresh, unexperienced, those also can bid the tenders. Then private or limited or selected tender. In case of these, tenders are invited from the limited number of reputed contractors for the execution of work for fair competition. So in case of this, only experienced tenderers are allowed to bid the tender or contract. Last is negotiated or single tender. In case of this, for the work of specified nature, tenders are invited from single well-known reputed contractor only. Now coming to tender notice, public tender should invariably be invited by giving an advertisement in the regional and English language in the local newspaper having large coverage in the prescribed form of the department. So main intention is that it should reach to each and every tender who is interested to bid the tender. So this tender notice is having some parameters which should be mentioned properly in the tender notice. Number one is name of the agency or the department inviting tenders. Second is name of the work and its exact location. It is very important, exact location, it should be properly mentioned. Coming to estimated cost of the work and contractors which are eligible to feed the bids. Then time of completion of the work. This is very important. The time, it should be properly prescribed. The place and time where the contract documents can be seen and blank tender forms can be obtained. That should be properly mentioned so that all the interested tenderer can collect the tender form. The cost of the blank tender form is also important. Then specifications of work and conditions of contracts, place, date and time of accepting the tenders, place, date and time of opening tenders. Then comes to earnest money which is required to be deposited, and last is security deposit to be paid. Now this tender, it is having its particular procedure. So coming to procedure of inviting tenders, so it is carried out in various stages: preparation of detailed tender documents, issue of notice inviting tenders, submission of tenders, opening of tenders. Next comes to be scrutiny of tenders, then acceptance of tender and award of the contract, and last is rejection of tenders. Now first is preparation of detailed tender documents. So before advertising the tender notice, all the documents including detailed set of drawings, then detailed specification, terms and condition, it should be priorly prepared, and then tender notice is advertised or it is invited. Next is submission of tenders. So tenders are then submitted. Next is opening of the tenders. So as a part of this opening of the tenders, all the public tenders issued on or before due date must be opened on the date and time mentioned in the tender notice. There is a standard procedure of opening the tenders. The outer envelope number 4 should be opened first, in which all the rest of the 3 envelopes are inserted. Subsequently, envelope number 1, which contains earnest money deposit, shall be opened, and if earnest money deposited is not as prescribed, then the tender is to be returned unopened to the concerned contractor if he or she is present, or sometimes it may be handed over to the representative also. After this, the envelope number 2 containing covering letter, solvency certificate, along with income tax certificate is open. Lastly, the envelope number 3 containing the tender form is to be opened on the same day, or sometime it can be opened later date. Prior information is given to the tender. Next is scrutiny of the tenders. After opening the tender, thorough scrutiny of tender should be done. Now this scrutiny is carried out in following points of sequence. List of all the tenders issued along with earnest money. These are first list out. Every tender is duly signed by the contractor or not. It is also properly checked. Complete address of the contractor is properly mentioned or not at right place is also checked. Original terms and conditions which are supposed to attach with the tender documents are attached or not, or any sort of modification, changes or alterations are made by the contractor, it is also properly checked. Then rates are written in words as well and figures are not. If there is any discrepancy, that is also checked. Then calculations as well as total cost of the work, it is also checked. So after this scrutiny of the tenders, comparative statement is prepared. In case of this comparative statement, normally the lowest tendered amount is kept first and highest tendered amount is kept last. Next come to the acceptance of the tender. Normally, or as a rule, one can say that lowest tender shall be accepted by the competent authority, but sometimes the lowest tender is also rejected. For this purpose, it should be properly recorded, its confidentiality should be maintained, and in case of this, under such circumstances, the second lowest tender, which is very near to the estimated cost of the work, it is accepted. Now coming to other parameters, earnest money deposit. Earnest money is the amount which is required to be deposited at the time of submitting the tenders. If earnest money is not submitted, maybe in the form of check, maybe in the form of DD, in that case, that tender is rejected. So it is deposited as 1 to 2% of the estimated cost of the work. Earnest money is nothing but it is assurance of the contractor for execution of the work. And this earnest money restricts upon the overcrowding of the tender. This amount is kept with the owner till the contract is allotted to some contractor. The earnest money is refunded to unsuccessful contractor. Now coming to security deposit, as its name suggests, it is the security against the what? So it is deposited in the amount the contractor has to deposit with the owner whose tender is accepted. It is security against terms and conditions laid down in contract specifying quality of the work and time of completion. Normally, the security deposit is accepted as 5 to 10% of the estimated cost of the work. Now coming to other types of tenders. So first is global tenders. As its name suggests, in case of these global tenders, tenders are invited globally, or can say throughout the world. For a big and specialized job or design and manufacture, global tenders are sometimes invited by the authority concerned throughout the globe to get the competitive offer from various specialized firm or reputed contractors throughout the world. Main intention is to get the work completed well in time as well as to maintain the quality. And in case of these global tenders, the facility is that the word global tender notice is written on the heading of the tender notice. Now coming to BOT tenders. It is the type of arrangement in which the private sector builds an infrastructure projects, operates and eventually transfers ownership of the project to the government. So these BOT tenders are having various forms. First is BO, build operate, BOT, build operate and transfer, BOO, build, own and operate, BOOT, build, own, operate and transfer, BT, build and transfer, BTO, build, transfer, operate, BLT, build, lease and transfer. So these are the various types of BOT tenders. Now coming to unbalanced tender. This is very important. If the rates quoted by the contractor are not varying much from those mentioned in the schedule of rates prepared by the PWD, Public Works Department, the tender is called as balanced tender. In case of this balanced tender, there is a little bit deviation in the rates. However, sometimes the rates quoted by the contractor for initial items are higher, and for the subsequent items lower rates are quoted, but sum total remains practically unaffected, the tender is said to be unbalanced tender. The intention behind this unbalanced tender by the contractor is that to achieve more profit for initial items, and the rest of the work may or may not be completed by the contractor. Now coming to pre-qualification of contractor. So under this procedure, instead of calling tenders publicly, only selected tenders are invited who are considered suitable for that work. The intending bidders are supplied with the pre-qualification documents. The contents of these pre-qualification documents are as number one is past experience of handling similar type of work, technical personnel engaged along with the contractor, equipment to be used for particular project available or not, major works in hand till date, and then financial capacity of executing the work of particular contractor. Now coming to the last point, that is three-bid system. Three-bid system. The tenderers, while submitting the tender, is directed to submit the document in 3 sealed envelopes called as three-bid system. This is the general procedure. Normally it is followed. So under this envelope 1, the first envelope clearly marked envelope number 1 shall contain following documents. Number 1 is registration details of the contractor, information regarding pre-qualification of the contractor, details of joint venture if any carried out by the contractor, a check or DD for the amount of earnest money, income tax clearance certificate as well as solvency certificate, list of machinery along with the contractor, as well as details of technical personnel. Then coming to envelope number 2, the second envelope marked as envelope number 2 shall contain following: covering letter for the offer, facial features that contractors may fill, assumption, conditions, deviations if any. And the last envelope is envelope number 3. The third envelope marked as envelope number 3 shall contain only main document, that is the tender document. With this, the chapter is completed. Thank you.